Good afternoon, everyone. It's Sean Buchanan of Equal Start. Today, I'll be interviewing the mayoral candidate, Natalie Campbell. She's a CEO on top of being, campaigning for London Mayor. And it's a great boon for her to come on today to spend some time with me to let me know her plans, what she plans to do in turning around the life of London, making London a better place for all of us. Um, eh, could you just tell us a bit more about yourself, Natalie, please?
But firstly, Sean, thank you for having me. Um, I'm from Northwest London. I grew up in Willesden and I went to school in Hendon. Um, I consider myself to be, I guess, an ultimate London girl in that I raved it up in Hackney at Oceans when I probably shouldn't have been there. Used to hang out on Cold Harbour Lane. There was an amazing Thai restaurant. I think it's still there, Satay Garden.
Yeah, I think it is still there. Yeah.
Yeah, so good, so good. And my dad would be like, "Where are you?" Like, "Oh, I'm just in Ladbroke Grove." And these times I'd driven all the way to South to go and get some Thai food. And I love London so much that it hurts my heart to watch the city fall apart for no reason other than a lack of decent political leadership. So I'm using everything that I know, everything that I've learned over my career of building businesses and working in charities and working in schools and working in the community to hopefully drive change. But it requires 1.5 million people, so people watching this, to show up on the 2nd of May to vote.
Um, Moving forward, you see when you decided to become mayor, what inspired you to do that? Because that's not something from our community that I don't think that anyone that I know personally has said, yeah, I'm gonna be London mayor one day.
The inspiration from a young age, it was less about being a mayor and more about being a CEO. So I decided I wanted to be a CEO at 15, and it came from 90s hip hop. I loved the whole movement from Bad Boy to Def Jam, So Def. This idea that you could have a high sense of agency, so really proudly lean into who you are and create and make, and yes, make money, but also entertain people and lift people up. And so I wanted to be a CEO at a really young age. And then as I started to go on that journey, and I opened my first business at 19, at 21, I had a retail franchise, and then I started joining boards. I understood the importance that politics has on our lives. And I didn't want to be political. I didn't grow up thinking, yeah, I really want to be an MP or anything of that nature. But as I started working in these spaces and sitting actually next to the current mayor on one of his boards, I was sort of looking around and going, not everyone in this room knows what they're doing.
Mm.
And that has built over time. And the real trigger point that for me was like, I need to do something, was Child Q. So for
Okay.
those that don't know, Child Q was the case of a young Black girl, 15, who was strip searched in a school.
Yeah, I heard that
I
story.
heard this news and it hit me to my core, partly because 15 is the age for me when I realized so much about who I am and what I wanted in the world. But it was the fact that in a space where you should be safe, a teacher has called a police officer who has then decided that they're going to strip search you alone in an
Mm.
environment
Mm.
and ultimately violate everything that you believe to be true about yourself at a moment in time. And that set me on fire. I started a petition to get it debated, and I was speaking to the DFE and doing all of this stuff. And I was realizing that the mayor, if he wanted to, could say, we stop strip searching children today. Given,
Cool.
there was more reports that came out that said 9,000 children had been strip searched by the Met Police, some of them under the age of 13. And I'm like, hold on, who's
No,
sitting
that's crazy. That's crazy.
endorsing stuff? So that was the big fire that really launched all of this.
Word, that's unbelievable. Mm.
Right?
I signed a petition about that, and that fun enough, that's when I went to the mayor's office. I spoke back to her. Is it Mayor's Office of Police and Conduct, the MOPAC.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went to them, and that's through Equal Start. I tried to get them to develop a policy where there's a monitoring, there's a committee that oversees them, and hopefully one day the IOPC as well, because they need oversight. There's too many ex-police officers basically marking the homework of current police officers. So you know what self-regulation needs to without oversight. Yeah, it's diabolical, really.
The
Um,
system is for
Jones,
purpose.
sorry.
The system isn't fit for purpose, and the only way to realistically change it is through political change.
It's true.
We can
It's true. I
protest all
agree
we
with you.
like.
Mm. Well, in terms of the housing, because you know, Londoners I see every day complaining about housing, and so there's not enough places for us to live in. How would you resolve those issues? 'Cause I know you've got big plans from your manifesto, your recorded manifesto. If you could share a bit more about what you want to do about that.
So the first thing that we need to accept is London does have enough space to house people. The spaces that we have either aren't fit for purpose, they're low quality, they're not being utilized in the best way, or where planning is in place, that planning isn't necessarily the most effective or efficient. And that's not everything, but you know, across the board, we could be looking at efficiency in a different way. So for me, taking a step back and looking at housing, the big thing that people were saying, I did a survey, was affordability. You can't put up a block of flats and say, say this is affordable and the starting price is £700,000. Who is that affordable for? Because I know
Exactly.
many people that have, first of all, the 20% deposit and then the salaries to get to that place to make that affordable as a first home. So we need to look at affordability. Affordability for me is no more than 40% of your salary. At the moment, when we're looking at both mortgages and rents, people are paying upwards of 70% of their salary. So we need to revisit a lot of the planning applications that have been granted based on the London plan and look at the density of those plans, but also, are they the right sorts of developments in the right places? So should this be a family home development versus a studio 1-2 bed development?
Yeah, that's what most of the properties I've seen come on the market are. One to starter homes or only homes for couples, not ones with children and families.
So you've then locked a huge market from ultimately out of the buying process. We need to stop telling everyone that they need to own a home. Actually, a strong build to rent market means that there's more options and it helps reduce the ultimate market price because everyone isn't front loading into private developments owned by a landlord that's got 1 or 2 different properties that's subject to the, you know, the whims of, or not even the whims of the mortgage industry of banks and their mortgages, but a rental market that actually is bigger than the individual landlords with 1 or 2 developments, because it's either backed by private equity or a co-investment fund led by the mayor. And some people are thinking, well, how is she going to do this? The mayor has entities called Mayoral Development Corporations. There are currently 2. One is the LLDC that some people will know managed the Olympic Park development.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I know that one.
Which is Old Oak Park Royal Development Corporation. The mayor could start, and as mayor, I would start more of these development corporations to take a bird's eye view of planning, to make sure over a number of boroughs, if we're putting in 200 million, 500 million, is this creating a district or a neighborhood that works across the board, that means families can still stay, that means people can rent well, that we've got a good amount of affordable housing, and that mixes well with what is already there in terms of private development? Can we start to retrofit some of the empty properties that are here? Can we reclassify some of the land that's green belt, that's not green because it's concrete wasteland with no biodiversity? Can we bring that back into use? There are all of these levers that the mayor can have, that when you take a strategic view, actually you get much better results. And what we're not seeing, I'm not seeing, is that strategic view to really give Londoners the homes that they need. It's the right homes in the right places, not just more.
I saw something in the Evening Standard the other day. They said there's a lot of brownfield sites as well in London that they said they could build them, but they say they're environmentalists and neighbours that already got private homes there say no, they don't want it. It's an eyesore and it's too disruptive.
And so this is the conflict between empty land and, again, people that have bought their own homes outright. If you've just bought a home and you can, you've got a bit of a vista and a view, do you want a 10-story new development at the back of your property? Probably not. But that you don't have to build a 10-story high density or 20-story high density development in that space. And that's what I mean about having that strategic overview. Actually, does it make sense to have a small plot of family homes? Does it make sense to turn that land into create a completely different use? Could it be a community garden and a lot like there are so many other things that we can do with this space that is about a broader community conversation as opposed to individual sort of the piecemeal conversations that we're having at the moment. And that's why I talk about people living better and well communities and using language that we don't necessarily hear, like happy neighborhoods. These are the things that create happy neighborhoods as opposed to this is my house and I live here and nothing else should happen. And then everyone else that's saying, well, I would love to just have a home that I know is mine, that is warm and affordable and all of the things that should be a basic right.
That's true. That's true. Oh, do you think it's by design though? Do you think it's by design? Because it's since we were like, say, at secondary school in the 90s, I've seen the house prices 15, 20x. And then obviously the wages and salaries don't go up in line with that. And then they don't build council homes anymore. Because like my parents moved from Stocker Park Estate and bought their first house in Strattonville in the early 90s in the negative equity crisis. When we had Black Monday and things like that, when John Major was in charge. And since then, it's just gone up and up and up. Even when we've had recessions, there's maybe a 5-7% pullback, and then it goes up again, rockets again, and then it's locking people out of the housing market. They don't want to build any social housing. They're constantly telling you about home ownership and doing massive over leveraging banks with loans. So for houses that are not really worth the money that they say they are, then people get into trouble and then they repossess them. It's become an increasing pattern, and I can tell government are not so worried about it. They're saying, well, it's a free market and you must find a way and through your own will and determination and improve your work skills or do something entrepreneurial where, you're in charge of like a blue chip company, then you'll be able to do that. And it's all on your responsibility. That's the kind of undertone I get when they talk about that, because they've known for years, but successive Labour and Tory governments have done nothing in terms of solving that crisis. They're just building the pressure slowly and then propping it up with cheap credit.
So you are right in terms of, is it by design? But what my counter to you would be that London is a global economy just by itself. Forget the Southeast, forget any other part, forget the Shires. London by itself, Greater London, is a global economy. And in a global economy, land is always going to be at premium. And you would expect the levels of growth that we have seen from a property perspective. What you would have expected in the right conditions is that wages and the general standard of living would also increase. And that's what we haven't seen. That's broader market activity at play. But what I think the mayor's role in this is that the mayor could have forced more affordable housing through the planning process. And we have faux affordable housing at the moment. And that's, it takes tens of years to get developments to fruition. So that isn't just the current mayor, that's the previous.
Yeah, Boris Johnson, Ken Livingstone.
10 as well. And the reason I think that we're in that position is, and this is what I've noticed, they're not people that are approaching running London as a connected system. London isn't just its homes or just its tubes or just the buses or just health or just education or just, it's not just these independent things. A mayor for just this thing, it doesn't make sense. we have to start looking at London a bit like the Thames that flows through it. It's one connected system. And how does planning permission and a new train station here impact what's going to happen in the mile, 3 mile, 5 mile radius around it? Do we have the right provision and infrastructure in place to support that? If we tell everyone that they need to stop driving their cars over here, what does that do over here? So LTNs, if one more person tells me that an LTN supports clean air and safety for children, when visually you can see all it does is push cars off the nice leafy roads with the parks onto the areas where actually children are living in high density properties, and ultimately probably closer to the deprivation line. Like if that traffic's heading that way, then all you're doing is making the children you say you're protecting worse off.
Yeah.
Sound pollution, actual pollution, like that level of density and that high anxiety of a city buzz all the time, that is not healthy for a child growing up in that space. But yet the child that lives around the park, you know, never hears or sees a car and has lovely fresh air. And that's where the LTNs are. My only caveat for that is the ones that are by schools. But anyone that's, you know, going 1,000,000 miles an hour down a road where a school is on is just an idiot anyway.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah, all of this policy making in an isolation, it's just bad design, it's bad leadership, and that's the frustration that I feel at the moment.
Isn't it like kind of entities behind that? Because surely Sadiq must know that. Boris obviously knew that because he's a blue blood Tory. But why are they not actively doing something to improve things? Because they've known this for years. And they do the PR campaign to say, yeah, they want that. But then when you match, it doesn't match up to what they actually do. They say all the nice rhetoric, but there's no action.
So I'm going to call it that they don't care. And, you know, I say this, I voted for the current mayor. I've worked with the current mayor, but I'm disappointed by what he's actually achieved. And I think what happens is that people go into a job, especially politicians, they go into a job and then they start thinking about the next job that they're going to have. Who do I need to keep sweet for the job that I'm about to have next? Versus as an independent, I'm not trying to be the leader of a political party. I'm not trying to be the Secretary of State of X. My mandate comes from the people that voted me in. So if I am not keeping you happy and healthy and delivering the London that you want, you're going to vote me out. So I have to focus on the job that I've got. I keep saying this and people keep saying it. Don't say that. But the people are my boss, because there is no other job for me to move into next. That's the problem.
Yeah, establishment figures. Yeah,
Prime Minister back of being the mayor. And so people are going into this role thinking, well, what's the next big thing that I could have? And that's the wrong approach to take.
Yes, it's terrible. Moving on though, you see what you said about the transport. Yeah, that's the next thing I want to ask you about. Obviously, you know, the TfL is in trouble. I think they was bailed out during the lockdowns, isn't there? Even though they've been making money for years. And someone told me the other day there's billions of pounds locked on our Oyster cards, ones that are lost and things like that. As I said, I don't know how they could, within 2 years, they're almost bankrupt. And the government, I've been told, has been trying to force through changes now with driverless trains, less human staff at the stations. At the same time, they're saying they want to protect people that are traveling, you know, in the late night economy, especially women, from being abused or attacked. But at the same time, they're still trying to push through a lot of automation and remove people from the stations because citing costs and innovation. So how do they make up? How do they get away with that one? It's like talking out of both sides of their mouth.
Again, it goes back to not looking at things as a system. So you'll have one group over here that are saying, right, efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. And I'm a fan of innovation when innovation is applied in the right way. But if you're going efficiency, 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 we need to reduce headcount and put in technology. And then you have a group over here that's saying, but actually we need to keep people safe. And you've got a group over here that's saying, oh, there's this pot of money and a surplus, and then people over here that are going, but actually there's no money to buy new trains or fix them, and those people never speak. You get this convoluted message. Whereas if you take a step back and say, what is the role of transport in London? It's for you to get from A to B, whether that is from home to school, home to work, home to college, college to the shop, whatever it is. And what is the most efficient way in a myriad of things, in a myriad of sort of metrics for that to happen. So it needs to be environmentally sound. It needs to be cost effective. It needs to have a long lifespan in terms of the infrastructure. So if you're buying a train today, that train should still be working in 30 years, all of that sort of stuff. And then going, right, well, what investments do we need to make today that means in a year, 5 years, 10 years, we get to that goal of people being able to successfully get from A to B? I think if people took that approach, we would have very different outcomes. So I know this will annoy some people, but I've been thinking about the central line. If we really wanted to bring the central line up to scratch, you can't fix the aeroplane while the plane is flying. What needs to happen is, now that we've got the Elizabeth line, the central line probably needs to be shut for about 3 months. And you know when I'd shut it? Over the summer, when it's too hot to be on it anyway. No one wants to be on the central line in the middle of the summer. People can flow onto the Elizabeth line and other lines to get to where they need to be. And I would fix all of the trains that can be fixed through new parts during that period. But also, if, and hopefully this is in train, if there are any new trains that have been commissioned to start running, you can then start doing the track testing at that point. So you then come back and it might be a too short timeline, but let's say you come back in September, October, and you've got all of the trains fixed and running. You've got new trains that have been tested along the line, and people start using it and they know it's not going to break down again. We have an Elizabeth line that doesn't always run. How can a brand new line?
I know, a brand new, I know, it's terrible. It's terrible.
It's just like, you have to build, we have to do things in a very different way to get better results, and it all just feels a bit piecemeal.
Yeah, it is. Always when you got too many hands in the broth, it spoils it. Yeah, I've seen it. But the thing is, they know that as well, but it keeps happening generation after generation.
Because we have politicians running things, not people that have actually run a business. That's ultimately it. We have a mayor who has no background in transport. We have
his dad was a bus driver, I heard. To be fair, he's around the corner from where I'm in Tooting. He was MP there before he became London mayor. So that's how he always trusted. That's how he always trusted. Reason that one off, even though you're right. He has no background.
I'm not saying I'm not an expert in transport either. What I am an expert in is, how do you build things that work? How do you create a system and a strategy that gets to the goal that you're trying to achieve? How do you address people's frustrations, your customers' frustrations, to give them a better product? That's what I am an expert in. And then I can apply that to multiple areas. Whereas if you've only ever been a politician, and let's be real, a politician's job is writing letters. They are government legislative body, but the main lever and thing they do is write letters. Writing letters is not the skill set required to run London.
I agree.
We'll call it. So we need to stop putting people that have spent their career writing letters in charge of big, systemic, complex systems like a city, and start to say, who would be best placed to actually lead this?
You think it's part of a gatekeeping process, because they know that these people don't have the experience or technical knowledge or expertise, but yet these kind of types still keeps these big public facing positions?
It's the system is supporting itself, right? So if they said, yes, we agree it shouldn't be a politician, then they lose a political power bargaining tool. It's easier to let politics and self-interestedness drive decision-making in a political party than it is to say, what's the right thing for the city, or what's the right thing for the town, or what's the right thing for the region. Because politics in and of itself right now is very self-interested. Politics is not doing what it should be doing, which is serving the people. We've seen that definitely for the tenure of this government, regardless of who's been running it, and we're seeing it around the world. Unfortunately, politics has lost the art of service, and we need to get back.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. In terms of, I know you said recently about helping some of the younger citizens, especially people under 25, into training employment. They, they always say, the politicians say needs of young people not, in training employment, education. So I know you said you had a plan to make sure that people had activities to do. There's more youth clubs and things like that. Could you explain more for us of how you're going to do that?
So it's like, why are they not in any of these things? Probably because the system isn't working to keep them doing something that is working for them. And so there are so many things in this for me. I am a student of entrepreneurship. I believe every young person in London needs to build entrepreneurial skills. And I don't necessarily mean the skills to start a business. I mean the skills that an entrepreneur has in terms of resilience, communication, creativity in its broadest sense, knowing how to create, make, and sell something, again, in a broader sense. That could just be you as an individual at an interview. And we're not teaching it in school, and there's add-on provision, but if it was at the heart of what every single school and academy did, and I know this works because I ran a business incubator in a school to do this, we'd be giving young people a completely different future just based on what they have within their own internal toolkit than what we're currently giving them. And I do believe that it sits outside of sort of the standard education system, because teachers can't do everything.
I agree with you.
That's one of the things that as a mayor I would go about funding and creating more partnerships between business, and I mean small businesses, freelancers, entrepreneurs, and bigger business with schools, because that bridge just isn't there. So we're not supporting young people to access the world of work. Then for the young people that are outside of that system, it's the why. So we are underloving young people in London. We are not giving them safe spaces to explore who they are and who they might want to become. We're not enabling them to live in a way that's low anxiety. I had a day in London, I was doing different things, and then I had to go over to Stratford. And it was just a day, London seemed to be kicking off. There was a massive fight on the train. Things just weren't working. And I was like, wow, as someone that's not really sane, like I feel a high level of anxiety right now.
Oh, you bore witness to that. You was actually there.
I was like, this is, I'm sitting here thinking, is someone going to lose their life today? Like that, it was that level of kickoff on the tube. I was like, if this is what a young person feels like all of the time, I can see why we have a mental health crisis.
Yeah.
Like if this was my standard way of feeling, Monday through Sunday, from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed, I don't know if I'd be able to make it through a school day. I don't know if I'd be able to make it through all of these systems that are in place, be that going to FE or doing an apprenticeship or whatever it is. And so how do we support young people, or how do we change London? So that level of anxiety comes down, and it comes down to elements of crime and safety and other things. But how do we then give them safe spaces so that they can just go, let me have fun? Play schemes.
Yeah, I went to a load of play schemes when I was young.
I used to play out in the park. I just got to be a kid. And I don't think young people now, unless they are of a certain socioeconomic group, get to be children.
Yeah.
They have to become adults at this high level of anxiety very early on. Which means for some of them, the systems we have in place are just not ones that they can thrive in. They cannot thrive in a school environment. I don't necessarily know if all of the PRUs, or I don't believe all of the PRUs are fit for purpose. And then there's no funding for all of the other wraparound support.
Yeah, there is no funding. They said that they can only do that from growing the economy and more taxation, and I don't see that being funneled into local initiatives. I've been seeing it funneled abroad. Yeah,
There
the
is
conflicts.
there is no local economy if you don't look after young people.
Mm,
That's the bottom line.
mm,
The economies will fail. London will fail if we do not look after the young people that live in London. Because who's going to move their whole life? Okay, let's just think banker. I'm a banker. I'm doing really well in whatever city, and my company says we want to move to London. Who's going to want to move to London knowing, it's not safe and blah, 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 and blah. To make London an appealing place for everyone, and you need all levels of wealth within this, it has to have the fundamentals right.
mhm.
And those fundamentals, for me, start with how we treat our young people.
Yeah, of course, of course. Everyone was young. When Boris Johnson, Sadiq Khan, they've grown up. But it's like when they become adults, it's like they forget that they were young once. So I said, what happened to the hopes and dreams? Go back. I said, it's a personal conscience thing. That's what I do. When I get a bit grouchy or think about something, I said, oh, listen, those youngsters. I remember how I was. That always in the back of my mind. So that should regulate that kind of thought pattern. But then obviously with the political process, I guess they said, oh, listen, we're in the middle age or the prime of life, we're running things. So we would teach them and tell them what to do. And they're miscreants and they need to be told. And then you get that kind of dictatorial approach. As much as they smile and do the public relations routine about, oh, we want everyone to prosper, big society, we're going to spread prosperity. And it's just lip service. Yeah, unfortunately.
We need a totally different approach.
I agree. It's saying that with the MOPAC office, they've got this thing now, the policy, violence against women and girls, which there's a big PR campaign about it, but I've noticed there's not one for men and boys. And that in itself, I noticed, especially over the last 5, 6 years, it seems to divide the city. And there's a lot of competing elements now and a lot of misogyny and misandry, to be from what I've seen. And I just wanted to get your views on that and how you would try and heal the divisions and make the London a safer place for everybody, not just women and girls.
So I want to separate some of the things that you said. I think we are missing the strategy that makes London safe for everyone. And we do absolutely have to acknowledge that London needs to be safe for men and boys. And I'm going to start with the boys bit first, because if we look at the stats of who is losing their lives on the streets of London, it's predominantly younger boys. And if I add on to that, the ones then going to prison and losing proportions of their lives, again, it's young boys. So we really need to tackle that. And there are organizations that have proven that they can work with young people, they can work in communities, they can work with gangs, they can work with young people when they're identified at risk in primary school to deliver a different future. But for some reason, these organizations don't seem to be joined up, brought together to talk about a public health approach and then funded accordingly.
I think that's deliberate.
In Glasgow or back, when we were growing up, gun crime was a massive thing. It took a while, but they managed to get a grip on gun crime through that approach. So there is that, and that really needs to be acknowledged. On the women and girls bit, the reason it's important to call it out is because we've got to a place where a woman, I think, is murdered every single day at the hands of a man that she knows. And if we add globally, then it's multiple times a day.
I agree.
That should not be happening. If we had the same stats on that in relation to a health issue, be that a cancer or road collisions, there would be an effective strategy and plan.
Yeah, definitely.
So there absolutely does need to be a plan and a strategy in place. And I also think there's an element of what's been a long-term taboo, and I'm talking more on the domestic violence side here, where it's partly the woman's fault. And so calling it out and having a bigger conversation about it helps remove a stigma for a lot of women. And then on the bit that's the harassment which has led to more of the public conversations that have been going on around women's safety. That for me goes back to that whole thing of London not feeling and being like it should, that high level of anxiety that everyone's operating at, the mental health crisis that we have going on right now. All of these things create a space where women and girls don't feel safe, and create a space where men and boys aren't safe. And then when you add the mix of the Met Police into this, is
Yeah, of course.
not all of the Met Police, but individuals within the Met Police who are then perpetuating these crimes and doing these things on both sides, right? You're like, oh, the whole system's absolutely broken. So who is going to fix it, and where do you start?
I know you're saying about the public health approach in terms of violence against women and girls.
Public health approach across the board. It's one of the key things that the mayor can push and fund, and all of the lessons learned globally are available, and we seem to keep reinventing the wheel, and organizations have been saying, like, this is what we need to do to end violence against women and girls. And it seems to be falling upon ears that don't want to hear. So having a mayor that's taking a drastically different approach is what we need. We're not going to get a different result with the same people in power. And I think as soon as people connect with that, they will vote for an alternative.
So when he threw, say, Chris said, is it Chris Dick? That was the former Met commissioner. He basically forced her to resign. So he's saying that is his commitment to it. And I did notice as well what a lot of especially activist organization lobby groups missed out. You see with the schoolgirl queue that you mentioned, the two officers at strip search, sorry, was Caucasian ladies. And I noticed when they came to the reporting in the papers, it was kind of skirted over. It was just police officers. When I know if that was a male, they would have said it was a male officer, like with Sarah Everard, which I find odious. How would you rectify that with terms of the London Met? Because a lot of the male officers are running for cover now, and they think that I hear regularly, especially on the grapevine, they said, oh, the feminazis have taken over. So that's why you get the closing ranks and trying to sweep over misdeeds of when it goes on, because they feel like they don't have a say in how to govern certain policies when it comes to that. And you get us against them butting heads. So it's not, like you said, it's not a unified approach. A lot of fear and covering backsides. That's what I've seen personally anyway.
So everything I've said about the Met Police in terms of changing the way it works, it goes both ways. I believe that for the most part, anyone that joins the force wants to do good, but they don't have a job that gives them dignity. I watch videos of Met Police officers writhing around on the road, like trying to hold perpetrators down, just being spat, all sorts of stuff that you and I would not tolerate that.
Exactly.
Our job. And if we were seeing that on top of additional trauma, there is a mental health challenge there. And we know that first responders, and I'm saying this in the broader sense because the fire brigade was also on special message, or the London Fire Brigade was also on special.
Yeah, they were. After Grenfell incident, wasn't it?
Yeah, but again, another thing that the Mayor of London is responsible for is the Chief Commissioner. We have to acknowledge that individuals, people, humans do these jobs. And so we have a duty of care to the people doing these jobs to enable them to show up with dignity, with respect. But it goes both ways. The trust compact between the community and the Met Police as a whole has been broken, so we need to rebuild it. The current mayor talking about the fact that he got rid of Cressida Dick doesn't mean anything to me, because he also, for the first 7 years of her tenure, would start a conversation by saying, you know, this is my name and I'm a feminist. I recruited the first female police commissioner. and the first female commissioner of the fire brigade, and he made it a big part of his performative song and dance. And then all of
Yeah, yeah,
go wrong, and
that's
then
true.
it's like,
That's
oh
true.
well, I fired her. That's my commitment to the cause. No, well, but you were co-signing everything that she did in year 3 and year 5, and all of a sudden now you're not co-signing and you're getting rid of her. Oh, okay. So yeah, that bit frustrates me in not actively saying we are ending the strip search of children. You are co-signing that happening. You are allowing that to happen.
He was.
That happened predominantly. So Child Q was the case of a girl, and I think that's the only reason why it sort of rose to the public consciousness. But it's happened. The majority of the 9,000 kids were boys. I think it was 75% of it were boys. And then of that, the majority were also young boys that were Black.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, that's what it is. You're saying how it is.
So as mayor, you've been co-signing all of this because you know it's happening and you're allowing it to happen, regardless of who the commissioner is. And there are just multiple layers of that over and over and over again. Whereas if you judge someone by their actions, not what they're saying, but by their actions and what they are actively endorsing by what they choose to ignore, that tells you more about who they are and how they're leading than anything that they can say or any PR stunt or any lovely video. Just watch what they are not driving change in, and then you'll know who you've got. When someone shows you who they are, believe them.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a great, believer in that. But I've noticed with the general public, because of the pressures of life and having to work and go to school and they're managing everything, they only get the snippets. So what they see is what they like. And in this modern day, seems to be personalities are a big thing. Because to be fair, from what I've seen of him, he seems very affable and caring in public. So people will buy into that because that's what they see in the very, the news and briefs on London Tonight. The newspapers, they will see that, the Elizabeth line, well, what's the one where he changed the orbital line now to the Windrush line, and he's doing things like this just to acknowledge, Afro-Caribbean's contributions to the London over the years, but then he's not doing the necessary work underneath the foundational work to make sure, we've got access to, like, say, funding for the Mopac office. I tried to get some the other day, and it was very convoluted, and it was all this bureaucracy, and it's hidden. It's not. There's no big publicity around it. So when you're searching it, people are thinking, "Oh, well, do I fit the criteria? I have to go through these documents and a lot of red tape." So I said, "Yeah, that way it's about benign neglect." So he knows a lot of people they won't bother to do that in the end, and that's what I've come across to see myself.
Are the people that are leading London and leading the UK doing the necessary work, or are they doing the performative work? And it's easier to divide everyone and say, oh, it's them over there. It's them over there. Because when you go, it's them over there, they stop looking at you.
That's it.
I think, as mayor, if something's happened on my watch, I'm going to take accountability for it. Whether I was there or not, I take accountability. And taking accountability, it's like everyone running their household, right? Yeah. If your household is in disarray, do you say, but it's the children who can't put their toys in? Or is it what you have done to enable your children to be able to put their toys in?
Yeah, it takes courage to do that, though, Mrs. Campbell. Yeah, it takes courage. A lot of them, they're running for cover when they see that.
But and again, everyone listening to this, if you don't take accountability for your household, for the bills being paid, whether you got paid at the end of the month or not, right? If you don't take accountability for finding a way to pay that bill and you can't live there anymore.
It's our fault. Yeah, of course, it's my fault. Yeah, of course.
So it's, and that's not me saying that, yes, of course, there are, sometimes things are really complicated and
mitigating circumstances.
But people see that you're trying your best and saying, I'm owning it. Versus,
they'll give you grace. They'll give you a grace period, of course, and they'll be understanding. They can relate to you.
Honesty and grace. And I'm not giving anyone in power right now any grace because they are taking zero accountability for making London work for everyone. But they're taking all of the glory and praise for things that are just the job.
I think they cultivate that for the public relations because they can't afford to have, you know, their reputation stained. So they don't want to ever be seen as like, oh, you know, I've made a serious error because they think it undermines their authority and people lose faith. So they rather cover it up. Yeah, I've noticed that, especially with high level politics. It's true. It's very true. You see, going forward in terms of you know what you said about the business incubators and funding for like community interest companies and people doing social enterprises to help with, you know, social justice work in terms of everyday life in the citizens, trying to campaign, you know, mental health, mental well-being, things like that. How would you go about making it say a clearer pipeline, how to connect those organizations to funding or advice, say for a limited company business?
So for me, this isn't about just about funding. It's about people knowing where to get the resources they need to make their organizations work, whether that's a charitable organization, a social enterprise, or someone that's starting a new business. And we're just lacking that clarity. And there's been attempts over the years. Again, it's one of the things that I sat next to the current mayor for in terms of working on for a number of years on the London Economic Action Partnership. But what I think the issue is that when funds are limited, the prioritization of where they need to go to get to the long-term goal isn't clear. So I'm seeing things that have been funded where I'm like, that funding really benefits a very small group of people. But if you applied that funding over here, that benefits a much bigger group of people. So it costs £4 million a year to run a space to support young people out of homelessness. The mayor spent £6 million renaming the overground.
Yes, yeah, I saw that. I saw you call him out for that on your video. Yeah, I saw that.
So people know what line they're on. If I've got on the overground and I'm going to Clapham Junction, I just need to hear the word Clapham Junction. If I'm on the overground going to Kensal Rise, I just need to hear the word Kensal Rise. Calling it the Windrush line or the Suffragette line or the Lioness line doesn't change whether or not I know I'm going to Kensal Rise or Clapham Junction.
Exactly.
And that's what I mean from a decision-making and prioritization point. You can probably then apply that within each of the different funding pots, whether that's the funding for businesses or the funding that's going to charitable organizations or the websites that are being set up. Is this the best approach to deliver the outcome? Are we using this money wisely? Did we speak to Department A over there? Because I'm pretty sure if the team that were working on the renaming of the line said that they had a £6 million budget and they said to the team that were working on homelessness, the team working on homelessness would have gone, oh, but we don't have that money. We've got 500,000.
And that happens so often, I notice, in politics. I always wondered if does he see it as he's providing jobs for like maybe the constructions and the designers and the artists and
no, it's a political year. What I think someone genuinely thought, what is going to give you political credibility with women and people of color? Oh, let's rename some lines that don't need renaming in a performative way in the name of diversity, which further stokes that conflict, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah, it does. Because I've seen a lot of men complain about that, to be fair. The Lionesses, but I said to be fair though, the Lioness is €1, the euro, so I can understand that.
The Lionesses are far more successful than the men's team. And I don't mean about that. I mean the whole conversation about diversity. He's done something in a performative way in the name of diversity to win votes.
Definitely.
Which then stokes the fire of everyone that's anti-diversity. There's a big movement in the US that against equity, diversity, and inclusion. It stokes their fire because they're like, you're wasting money when you could have done this over here. And it's like, well,
for everybody, yeah. Homelessness is a big if that's a fundamental basic need of life. Shelter. Yeah.
So hasn't helped. And then, you know, he calls people out who are saying just how performative it is. You know, they're anti-London or they're anti-inclusion. No,
Islamophobia.
it's an idea. Dude, just hold your hands up. It was a
Yeah.
bad last time.
Decision.
And you wasted £6 million.
Mm. He'll never admit that publicly because it undermine his standing in front of the eyes of Londoners. Yeah, they think if he's like the emperor with with the emperor with no clothes. I do have clothes on. Don't mention it to me. It's like the mental comb over. Mm.
Agreed. So,
Yeah. What can we do? Hey? What can we do?
well, everyone can vote for me to be the next mayor.
Yeah, well, you've got my vote.
That's what
I think it's the first time in my life at 43 that I'm voting, and it's because it's for you. So just remember that. Yeah, I've never been before. Yeah, never.
I feel
I'm
privileged.
glad you come along. Madam Brock said you got to contact this lady. Said she can help with a lot of the things that we got issues with, and obviously I've seen your work and obviously your videos and your background's impeccable in terms of what you've done before. So yeah, I'd be definitely. I've already voted for you. So,
But you know, I want people to know on here, you didn't do it just off the back of videos. You challenged me. You were like, no, I want to speak to you first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I always try to do that. To be fair, to find out, like you said, if just to make sure it's not performative. Yeah, but you could tell that, to be fair, from your energy and the questions that you ask, and when you've challenged the establishment figures in public. That's not, say, for instance, your predecessor that I thought about voting for, but then I changed my mind with Sean Bailey. I thought he was thing, but then when I looked closely at what he was doing, I said, yeah, I could never vote for you. And the rest, as you know, the rest is history. He's a lord now. He's been made a lord for failure to win the London mayor races. I find it. He must be. He have the position and he's got connections in the right places. Yeah, it seems. What can we do?
I try to live in good grace, so I will not speak upon other people's situations.
Mm-hmm.
All I can say is that I hope that in the next 2 months, people realize that who I say I am is who I am, and that they take a minute to really look at what I've done and go, okay, if she's done all of that when no one was looking, she did all of that just because she was doing it, she's going to show up as mayor and really do the damn thing. Mm-hmm. As opposed to going, oh, she was on the Conservative long list for 4 months. Oh, she was on the Lib Dem long list, or I wasn't on the Lib Dem long list. I was a member of the Lib Dems as well, or whatever thing that they want to say. My career for the last 20 years speaks to who I am and what I care about, and the change that will make much more than a headline or a moment in time that served a purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to be fair, integrity. Yeah, you have integrity because you, like you said, you was doing it when no one was looking. So that's more a person that I would trust than someone that was just performing in public to win votes.
Exactly, there's a big difference.
And thank you for coming today. Thank you. Hopefully, I will see you soon when you come to Merton to visit us, so we can stir up more support.
I'm coming. I spent a lot of time in South London recently.
All right.
You know what? It'll be as much as I love Northwest London, it will be South that wins it.
I think aren't we the biggest part of London, South London, in terms of the region? And
it will be people in South London showing up and saying, "I'm going to vote for the first time."
Yeah, but that'd be serious. Well, I'm one of them already, so.
Yeah. Sean,
And thanks again for coming today. I'm gonna contact you soon about when you come to Merton. Thanks very much, Ms. Campbell. And this is Sean Buchanan at Equal Start signing off.